Hello, Garland Nixon here. Nancy Pelosi has come and gone from Taiwan. Let's talk about the outcome. Hello, Garland here. And so Nancy Pelosi made her way to Taiwan. It was a big, there was a lot of big to do around the world in the United States and China, et cetera. A lot of people held their breath, wondering, will there be war? What's going to happen? What are the results going to be? And so now let's look at it post Pelosi trip and try to figure it out. I got about a half hour or so, so let's make good use of it. A couple of things. Number one of the things that people suspected was that China was going to go to war, and this was discussed here in the U.S. mostly through the lens of U.S. culture, U.S. history, U.S. militarism, and that was: you push me, I got to push back. You threaten me, I got to punch back. I set up red lines, you cross the red lines, I got to strike you. Right. So it was through the lens of: I said don't do that, or else you did it, and now I must immediately act. Immediately, I must act. Right. Well, there are other lenses through which to view this. And as I said, study it through the lens of martial art, of say Zen Buddhism, of Oriental or Asian, Eurasian culture, things of that nature. Let's start here. If someone does something that you don't like, what do you have to do? For instance, let's say from a self-defense perspective, and someone says, well, I'm going to threaten you, or I'm going to say something that you don't like, and you say, well, you better not, and they do it. Do you hit them? Or do you say, if you don't strike me, if you don't come within striking distance of me, I'm not going to strike back? You don't have to strike. It is not that in other words, China didn't have to punch back, and in all likelihood, I think they viewed it as: we're going to do a lot of threatening. We're going to do a lot of like snakes. They call it a false strike, right? A lot of very highly poisonous snakes will do a false strike, right? The snake, boom, out and back, right? In a martial arts snake technique, right? The snake keeps everything in front of it, everything in front of it, boom, keeps you in front of it, boom, strikes, right? The eyes, boop, whatever the case may be, right? So you keep your enemy in front of you, and you can do a false strike. So from the perspective of a snake technique, one could argue that what the Chinese are doing in Taiwan is effectively, again, if we go to animals, it's a false strike. I'm going to strike at you to let you know, a poisonous snake, I'm going to strike at you to let you know, to make you back off, to give myself a little bit of room, and to let you know that I can strike at you. However, if the snake does strike and bite you, he does a couple things. He gets rid of the poison that he has, and maybe he doesn't have any more poison to strike a second time, and he's vulnerable, right? He's played his hand. That snake strikes you, he's played his hand, and he's out of ammo. And not only that, if I strike at you and miss, the worst thing you can do is punch at a person and miss, right? Let's say a person who doesn't know, a person who knows how to fight is going to boom, and they're going to bring that strike right back, so you can't do it. But a person who doesn't know is going to throw that, and that fist is going to stay out there. Now they're in deep trouble, right? If that strike goes boom and comes back, or it's a false strike, you use the shoulder. You see a punch coming with the shoulder. The shoulder, you'll see boxers do this. You'll see fighters do this. That's to trying to bait you to think they're going to fake that shoulder like they're going to throw a punch. Then when you react, then they throw the punch, but they're not going to give you the shoulder and throw the punch, right? So a false strike, an indication of a punch when it's not a punch, things of that nature. So those are all options in self-defense, right? So, but if you throw that strike out there and miss, look at that. My face is vulnerable. Look at that. They can grab that arm. They can get that wrist. Ooh, now I'm in trouble. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So oftentimes, a false strike or a fake like a punch is far better than a punch because you want the other guy to punch. You want the other guy to reach. You want his arms to come out so you can get a grip on his arm, his wrist. You can get the first strike, and you want this person to expose themselves to harm. You don't want to expose yourselves to harm first unless you absolutely have to. There's no way out of it. You've decided you're going to strike, but then you have to strike with all the viciousness you have. The idea is, as Bruce Lee said, and as Sun Tzu, the art of fighting without fighting, win every battle without fighting, things of that nature. So from a perspective of culture, one could argue that what China did was effectively the snake technique of false strike. And that's what they're doing in Taiwan. Again, boom, a false strike. Snakes will do that. Animals, bears. If you understand bears, there was a time when I worked with a nuisance bear. In Western Maryland, I had this nuisance bear thing under me, right? And they were having trouble with black bears, right? And you had to, we had this thing with shotguns with rubber bullets. You shoot the bear with a rubber bullet and hopefully he doesn't come back, things of that nature, how to deal with bears on your property. But one of the things you understand about black bears, one thing they'll do is a false charge to get you to back off, right? They'll run at you and stop, run at you and stop. So in the animal kingdom, right, and martial arts of kung fu, etc. There's a lot of white crane. There's a lot of studying of animals, right? A lot of imitation of nature. Then one could look at what's happening in Taiwan. One could look at the statements made by China and said they did a false strike or a false charge. Boom, charge at your enemy to get them to back off a little bit. Give yourself some room to think, some room to work, right? To either get away, to do whatever you're going to do. I would argue that from a perspective of being the American culture, I'm the cowboy and the tough guy. I told you don't cross that line. If you do, I'm going to punch you. From that perspective, in the bar, if you say that about my girl, I'm going to punch you in the snoot. And then you say that. Now you got to punch him in the snoot from the cowboy biker bar mentality. But from an Oriental culture, you don't have to. You are not bound by your words or threats to act in a particular way. You still have the option of acting in a manner that's most beneficial to you. And what's the best thing you could do if you have the opportunity? Back up. Survey the situation. Look at the landscape around you. Look at what's going on around you. Now, here you're backing up and this guy's threatening you, and you look and your best friend comes in, and 5 of your buddies from your rugby team all come walking in. Now you back up. This guy, I'm going to kick your ass. And you can say, hey, Joe, Bill, Tom. And the guy turns around and 5 of your big rugby buddy show up. The guy may say, hey, hey, I don't want to fight, because now he's looking at you and you got 5 friends. He doesn't feel as froggy anymore, as they say on the street. He ain't feeling froggy no more, right? So one of the things I think that China did was this: Pelosi comes, she goes. They do a false strike, as the snake technique would give you, or as a black bear would do, a false charge, right? That's in Taiwan. That's saying I could strike if I want to. You see, I have poison. You see, I have the speed and the ability to do it, the physical ability to harm you, but I ain't going to do it. I just want to scare you enough to back off. So that's the Taiwan operation. Let Taiwan know we could blockade you. We could fire missiles, we could do all kinds of things. All it is it's the equivalent of a poisonous snake doing a false strike, a bear doing a false charge, and plenty of other animals. And if you're ever around animals, if you ever deal with animals, wild animals, you'll see lots of animals do that. They run at you, right? And it's just an attempt. What else do animals do? They spread themselves out to look big. Humans actually do it too. You see, get around a bunch of guys and they want to look tough. They'll stick their chest out like that. And they'll try to hold their arms out wide, or they'll try to look bigger. It's an intimidation tactic. It's natural. It's in our genetics. We don't even realize we're doing it, right? So I think that's what China's move initially is: do a false strike, exhibit our poison, exhibit our ability to charge, but we don't have to charge right now. Now we've got a little room. Let's back off and survey the landscape. What do we see? Well, here's something I think that's critical that you have to think about that they saw. And this is a big one. I want to thank everybody for the super chats. Thank you very much. I'll get to those towards the end, but thanks for the super chats. I appreciate it. Thanks for the tips in Rockfin. Okay, let's move. Let's go. So what does China see first? And again, this is smart. Back up. Let's see what happens around there. I don't have to punch you. How does everybody else react? What does the rest of the world think? Are they on your side or are they on my side? What am I seeing in the U.S.? Let me read the U.S. papers, et cetera, right? So here's the first thing I think that is critical, and that is critical to read the tea leaves. South Korea. South Korea's President Yoon, he was but 2-3 months ago he took office. It hasn't been long, but this guy's he's he's a right-wing guy. He's a right-wing guy, but he's a bit of a loose cannon. He is a bit of a loose cannon. But keep in mind something. He's only been in office for 2-3 months. His approval rating is Biden-esque, like 30%. So here's a guy who knows 3 months, 2-3 months in, he's in deep and serious trouble, right? Here's a guy who knows politically. I mean, you're 3 months, 2 months, 3 months into your presidency, and you're at 30%. You can't feel good about that because you know the people are turning on you. So what happens? Nancy Pelosi leaves Taiwan and goes to South Korea. What do you need to know about South Korea? And this is critical. South Korea is not a sovereign nation by any stretch of the imagination. It is what Ukraine was before Russia invaded it. South Korea is a U.S. colony. Let me give you an example. Written in their constitution, in times of war. Now think about this. If there's a war, the U.S. takes over the South Korean military. In times of war, their military comes under the United States military. Is that a sovereign nation? Hell no. The same with Japan. They're not sovereign nations. They're U.S. colonies. The U.S. took them over and completely control them, just like the United States. Let's be honest with you. The imperial power, the United States, gives Americans, you're in the Democratic Party, you're in the Republican Party, they give you the illusion of democracy. They give you illusion that you control the government. It's just an illusion. You don't. It's just an illusion. There ain't no democracy here. They give Japan and South Korea the same thing. They have the illusion of independence. But if times get hard, they lose that illusion. That's what's happening with Europe. Europe had the illusion that they were separate states, they were sovereign nations. Now, the Ukraine situation happens, the U.S. Empire starts falling apart, starts crumbling economically, starts crumbling really morally. Every which way the U.S. is falling apart. And now they cannot afford to continue the illusion of sovereignty and independence for the European states. So they just say to them, look, bottom line is you got to do what we tell you to do. And right now we tell you to melt your economy down. And the leaders of the European states understand that it's an illusion. And when they are given instructions to wipe out their own economies, they understand that that's their job. It's just an illusion. The people don't understand it. But slowly but surely, they're starting to find out the truth the hard way. All right. Now, back to South Korea. That was just an aside. Back to South Korea. So what happens? Nancy Pelosi goes to South Korea, and President Yoon, 30% and cratering, Biden-esque numbers, is on vacation, and he says, I can't meet with Nancy Pelosi because I'm on vacation. Here's the problem. It wasn't a vacation. It was a staycation. He wasn't leaving the country. And might I add, the place that Nancy Pelosi visited, he was 20 minutes away. 20 minutes away. He could have rode a bike there. Much less his motorcade get him there in 20 minutes, but he was on vacation and he couldn't meet her. So the world's looking at that. Of course, China's looking at that. And what are they realizing? Your protectorate, your colony is scared shitless. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that China takes over Taiwan. And now they're in control of the biggest chip maker in the world. What's Samsung going to do? What's Samsung going to do? How dependent is South Korea on China? Extremely. This is, to them, this behemoth in many ways. Forget gross domestic product. That's the United States uses gross GDP. We invented GDP and we use GDP as a measure. Well, we invented the measure and we use that to decide how big everyone is. I mean, if you believe that, then you'll think that Russia's economy is the size of Italy or something like bullshit like that. Oh, no. If you go to purchasing power parity, you start to understand that Russia is more like Germany and probably a larger economy than Germany. It's much, much larger. Come on. You're not going to have the power, the military, et cetera, the power of Russia, and their economies the size of Italy. That don't make a lot of sense. The size of South Korea, literally, that's what they say. South Korea's economy is the size of Russia. Yeah, we're right. If you use the wrong, if you use the GDP, scale that the U.S. comes up with. So on we go. China's looking at that, and they realize, and Yoon realized, and everybody knows. Number one, North Korea, which is a nuclear power and a military power right next to South Korea, on South Korea's border, says we're down 100% with Russia, we're down 100% with China. And it has been reported that North Korea said that they would send 100,000 troops to Russia to fight in Ukraine if Russia wanted. Now, Russia doesn't need it. Of course, Russia's a huge, gigantic army, and Russia is, dwarfs North Korea militarily. The last thing they need, and they're using like 1/5 of their, or less than 1/5 of their military potential in Ukraine, so they don't need North Korea. But again, I think that was just, they did that to say to the world, we're behind Russia to 100%, and they support China. So South Korea is saying, if shit goes down, China's close friend is right next to us, and they got the barrel pointed at us, and they got the barrel pointed right between our eyes and the hammer cocked. So they really don't want none of that, as they say in football, they don't want none of that smoke, because you're not going to win that. If you get the fight, you're not going to win that one. You're going to get, even if you win, you lose. You're going to get turned to rubble quickly, even if it doesn't go nuclear. There is so much firepower for North Korea pointed directly at South Korea that South Korea couldn't, if they won the fight, if they won the war, they would be, what would be left to rule over in South Korea? A pile of rubble. Yay, we won. What do we have left? Rubble. Yay, I'm the prince of rubble. Who wants to do that? Who wants to be the president of a country that's rubble? South Korea also looking at it saying, if China blinks wrong, then our economy's wiped out and gone. So they're in a situation where they cannot anger China. So now, when President Yoon of South Korea has to make a decision as to whether he meets with Nancy Pelosi and angers China, or whether he chills out, he's like, I ain't getting into this, I'm out. China sees that. The world's looking. And the world's like, okay. I see somebody in the, Chinese cowards, right? If you view that from the perspective of a biker bar or a cowboy movie, you could say that. If that, of course, is the American kind of cowboy culture view of things. If you view it from a Zen perspective, if you view it from the culture of an Asian culture, if you view it from a martial arts, it's a whole different way of viewing the world. And when you view the world, for instance, from a perspective of a self-defense, right? Some guy, my instructor, right? My instructor, 6th-degree black belt. We used to play basketball together for many, many years. We played basketball. And I've seen where we've been playing, and some guy, because he's a skinny guy, right? He's maybe 150, maybe 6 foot, 6'1", maybe 150, 160 pounds, right? Skinny guy. But he's a 6th-degree black belt. You know what the parts of that guy. Trust me when I tell you, you wouldn't live a second, right? But I have been playing basketball with this guy, right? And over the course of the years, and somebody starts arguing and threatening and making, oh, you jerk, oh, no, you foul me again, I'll do this, right? And I've seen him just say, I don't want no trouble. Go pick up his bag, put his sneakers in his bag, and leave. It wasn't that he didn't have the ability to defend himself, but he didn't. But it's like he says, okay, so I go over and I show up and I hit this guy and I beat him up. What happens if he goes home and he gets a gun or a knife and he comes back and waits for me to shoot me? What happens if I've got my son in the car and he's out to get me and he shoots at me and misses and kills my son? I could put myself and others in mortal danger. And what did I win out of it, right? So it's a perspective. So now somebody could say, well, that guy's a coward. Some guy threatened him on the basketball court and he walked away. And the guy could say, you fouled me. And he's like, man, chill out. Leave me alone. Oh, yeah, you fouled me again. I'll punch you in the face. And he says, I'm out of here. And I've seen this happen. And it was simply wisdom. He ain't a freaking cowboy. Oh, yeah. What are you going to do? That's that cowboy biker bar Roy Rogers mentality, right? That says, "Hey, John Wayne, oh, I'll stand up to my enemies," but that can get you in the grave or someone you dear to you in the grave. What's the point? You're far better to say, "Hey man, I don't want no trouble. I'm out." And if the guy grabs you, you got no choice. You defend yourself and you demolish him quickly. He attacked you. You didn't have a lot of options, right? And so I think China's there. I think they will defend themselves if they have to, but they're not in a rush to get into a fight. They're in no rush to get into a fight. And I also believe that China sees this. If they have to get into a fight, they want it to be the circumstances to be very much to their advantage. And they have advantages now, but it's not to their full advantage. And right now, there's been Rand Corporation documents written that say China's growing too fast. If the U.S. is going to go to war and break them down and blah, 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 they're going to have to do it before 2025 or 2026, because by then China will have grown too fast. They'll be too powerful. The U.S. won't be able to handle them. Well, if somebody says to me, yeah, that Garland's exercising, he's working out, he's practicing his self-defense, and if I'm going to kick Garland's ass, I better do it now, because at the rate Garland is working out and building, within 8 months, I won't be able to touch him. I'll be able to kick it. He'll be able to kick my ass. And the guy comes up and pushes me. What am I going to say? Hey, let's fight now. I'll wait 8 months. Well, what? But I can beat you now. That's precisely my point. I can go toe to toe. I may be able to beat you now. I'll be able to give you a hard time. It'll be tough now. I can really we can have a big fight now, but by 8 months, you'll kick my ass in 2 seconds flat. And I'm like, I'll just wait till those 8 months is up and then we'll fight if you still want to. So for China to look at it and say, I'm getting more powerful and your country is economically crashing. Not only that, you say 2025, 2026, at the rate your country, see, China is growing, but at the rate that the U.S. is crashing, we ain't got that kind of time. And I think the U.S. knows it. It knows we are in recession, heading for depression. We are in stagflation of the 1970s. And they also know that their coalition is crumbling. They also know that the Europeans' situation is not good, that the Europeans' economic situation is going to bloody hell. And that so their alliance is going to fall apart, as right now they've got nothing but puppet leaders. But how long is that going to last? So the Chinese can say, one thing we're going to do, we're going to wait till this winter. We'll wait for the winter, because then your coalition in Europe will be in deep and serious trouble. You'll be so busy trying to hold that together, you won't have time to screw with us. Number one, you'll have to deal with that. Not only that, as your economy gets weaker, as your economy gets weaker, the people at home are going to get pissed, and they're going to start asking you to deal with problems at home. So it's to China's advantage. It's a wise thing. If you just want to be biker bar Joe, I said, don't do it. You do it. Now I got to punch you in the face. But if you want to be the wise old sage, right, that moves slow, you say, don't do it. China does it. If you're biker bar Joe, you punch, bam. If you're the wise old sage, you say, don't do it. The U.S. sends Pelosi and you go, okay, let me survey and let me see how everybody else reacts. Let me read the newspapers in the U.S. Let me look at the media in the U.S. and see how the media reacts. Let me look at the other politicians. Let me look online. Let me see how Twitter. Let me look at everything. Let me look at the U.S. allies all around the world. Let me see how they react. Let me say, at this point, I'm going to get closer to Russia and build a stronger alliance even with Russia. Russia's the real winner here. Russia is the winner, because now China's saying, look, we are the preeminent economic power outside of the U.S. Russia is a preeminent military power outside of the U.S. Think about this. Russia and China both have hypersonic missiles, but Russia has some tremendous military technology. There are areas such as anti-aircraft missiles, anti-aircraft systems, other areas where the U.S. has passed, Russia has passed the U.S. The China can very well say, look, if we take your military technology, combine it with ours, and we take your military technology and our industrial capacity to mass produce these things, we can put together a military alliance that makes the U.S. look like nothing, right? That can put them back on their heels, at least. Can put them back on their heels. Meanwhile, they got to deal with economic problems. So I think the sage energy, if we'll call it that, the sage part of China's leadership is not in a rush to start swinging. And you're always smarter to not be in a rush to just start swinging. And you allow the people to say, yeah, they're afraid, they're this, they're that. Okay. Again, like I said, my buddy, Master Vimy Grayson, and he walked away. Somebody threatens him on a basketball court. I know he's a 6th-degree black belt. He knows he's a 6th-degree black belt. This other guy doesn't know. So the other guy's threatening him. I'll kick your ass. I'll do this. I'll do that. If you foul me one more time, he leaves. And the guy, yeah, you're a chump. You better leave. I know, and he knows he can defend himself, but he has no reason or nor psychological need to prove anything. He is making the wisest move that in the long term is in his best interest, nothing more. I think China's looking at this saying, we did a false strike, false charge, snake technique, right? But in the long run, we're going to act in our best interest. We're getting stronger. They're getting weaker. Time is on our side. Their closest ally colony in the region, South Korea, has kind of recoiling in horror. Look, if the president of South Korea backed off, whoa, I'm not meeting with Pelosi, that means the leadership of South Korea is like, we're scared. You guys are going to cause problems. Meanwhile, the other Asian countries are looking at this saying, man, this is scary. These Americans are causing, potential nuclear war in our region. No, we ain't down with this. So this, I think, will make it harder for the U.S. to build any kind of alliances in the East, and easier for China, and more countries will be more apprehensive about the U.S. moving into the Indo-Pacific area, into China's realm. Meanwhile, China can say we're going to go more to a war economy and really step up building our military power, and we're really going to also step up our military alliance with Russia. And so you build this very, very powerful military alignment. So let's face it, the fact of the matter is the United States couldn't win a war, a land war with Russia. And they would take, in China's region, it's not likely they would do real well. They would take devastating losses, very devastating losses from anti-ship missiles in the region of China. So they don't really want that. Within Taiwan, I think the U.S. has 2 bases within like 500 miles or something of Taiwan, and China has like 50 or more. So the advantages are there. But again, Taiwan doesn't want to fight. China doesn't want to fight right now, and they don't have to fight right now. And they can sit back and watch and wait and plan. Meanwhile, additionally, the war games that they're doing actually do have an effective use in that they can game as to if they want to attack Taiwan, how they can practice, they can be prepared if they want to blockade Taiwan, if they want to attack Taiwan. So it does give them some practice. It does gives their troops and their Navy some practice if they want to do that. And a lot of people thought attack Taiwan. Well, maybe they want to do a blockade. Maybe they want an economic blockade. And don't forget, China could shut the door on Taiwan's economy. Taiwan's economy is based on mainland China. China could flip a light switch, and the people in Taiwan are starving tomorrow and deep in serious trouble. But again, one of the things you got to understand from the perspective of China, these are Chinese people. This is a Chinese province. Does the United States want to attack and starve the people of Vermont or Maine or New Hampshire or Nevada? It's part of the United States. Why do you want to murder all the people? So you know what I mean? A country doesn't, when it sees a land as part of its country and the people in the land as compatriots, it doesn't want to do that. China's really some smart things. One of the things that China said was this: we are going to do some economic sanctions to send a message to the secessionists that there's pain. But they said, but we don't want to hurt the people on the island because they're Chinese people, and we're not going to harm the people on the island. economically by causing pain for them. We already know there, by some measures, somewhere between 40 and 60% of the people on Taiwan, on the island of Taiwan, are fine with peaceful reunification, don't hate China, or not angry at China, and see themselves as Chinese and think this is a bunch of bullcrap, right? So the numbers say a lot of things are on the side of China waiting long term. In fact, what is not reported in the Western media is that there were a protest. There was a bomb threat, literally a bomb threat at Nancy Pelosi's hotel. There were protests in front of the hotel. There were people holding up signs, calling her names, calling her witches, things of that nature, right? There were a lot of Taiwanese people that were like, no, thanks, man. We don't need this crap. We're trying to, the way things are going for us, we're trying to survive, and you're getting on our damn nerves, causing us problems. So I think that in viewing that, we see that. Oh, let me add this. Though they're not saying it, there were a lot of reports from the EU that there was fear, and the fear was, oh, holy crap, the U.S. has started this fire in Ukraine in our backyard. We've climbed on board and put ourselves in a very difficult position. This is from the leaders of the EU, to the point where some of us are losing our jobs and more could lose our jobs, and we're facing an unthinkable winter. And the U.S. looks like they just want to walk away. These arsonists are going to start a fire and walk away. And they were right. The U.S. looked at it and they're like, well, we bullshitted people into believing that Russia was going to lose. And now the lies are coming, back to haunt us. People are going to be, kind of figuring out that Russia's not going to lose this thing, and that they never really were. This is Godzilla versus Bambi. This has always been the fight, that this is a military superpower versus a proxy army of the U.S. and NATO, of the U.S., forget the word NATO, the U.S. And now they're getting clobbered, and everybody's waking up to realize it. And soon, the EU is going to be in a capitulatory position where they're going to have to get on their hands and knees and beg Russia for gas. And I think Russia's still going to say no. Sorry, can't do it. Sorry, we've got gas turbine problems, guys. Have a nice winter, right? I think that's what the EU is looking at. And I think the US is just going to be like, yeah, man, those Europeans are screwed, huh? Yeah. Okay. Hey, let's look at that. Taiwan. What's going on over there? They're bored. Ukraine. Who's anymore even deals with Ukraine? That's so last year. We're going to go over here. We've effectively wiped out the European economy. We've deindustrialized those ignorant bastards, so they're all impoverished and screwed. We've destroyed their economy, so they can't compete with us, and we're done with them. They're finished. We've wiped out the EU. That was our plan. And now we're done. Let's go over here to Taiwan and see if we can, cause some chaos and mayhem there. And I would wager there are those in the EU in circles of power, as stupid as these people are, that in the back rooms, there's some discussion. Oh, man, we are on our own. It's worse than we thought. What are we going to do? You see Gerhard Schroeder going to Moscow, starting to talk about Nord Stream 2, starting to talk about some level of rapprochement, saying we got to look out for ourselves, trying to move in the direction of Viktor Orban. You see Erdogan, Turkish President Erdogan, heading over to Sochi, meeting with meeting with Putin. And Erdogan's clearly saying, well, looks like Putin's going to win this one hands down. I'm going to go talk to the winner. See, that's what happens a lot of times when you have a power struggle. Once countries start seeing who's going to win, they're like, I'm going to go hang with the winner. And they're looking at Ukraine and they're like, wow, the U.S. put this proxy war in there, this army in, and NATO put this proxy army in, and they are getting flushed like a toilet. So here's what we're going to do. Looks like Putin's going to win. Hey, Putin, let's talk. It sounds like me at the beginning of one of my videos. Let's talk, right? That's reality. That's big boy game, right? That's international power politics. It ain't about this bullshit of sticking your chest out and red lines. You do this and I won't. When it gets down to the nitty gritty, Erdogan's looking at economic problems at home, Erdogan's looking at issues in Syria with the Kurds, and now Erdogan's saying he wants the U.S. out. Now China wants the U.S. out of Syria. Russia wants the U.S. out of Syria. Now Erdogan's saying the U.S. needs to get all the troops out of Syria, and they're a NATO ally. Makes it tougher on the U.S. So I think Erdogan's playing a game to benefit him, to benefit his economy. He knows that there are neocons in the U.S. that want to overthrow his government too. So he's may need some protection himself at some point. So the Chinese are looking at the dynamics of empire that are crumbling worldwide. They're looking at what's happening in the Middle East. They're looking at the alliances, the anti-imperialist alliances that are building. Iran's now saying they're going to cultivate 1 million hectares of land in Venezuela. So now that's going to be jobs. That's going to be food that they're going to be able to. Venezuelans are going to get some of it. The Iranians are going to get some of it. They're going to be able to sell. They're looking at these countries saying, wow, these countries grow a lot of wheat, have a lot of economic power. What happens if we go to Venezuela, a very, very fertile tropical land, and we grow things that the world needs, whether it's wheat or rice or whatever? Now Venezuela and Iran recognize that's economic. First of all, they're able to feed themselves. Second of all, that gives them some economic power on the world stage. That gives them some power of being, a breadbasket of the world. People are looking at this thing. That's another commodity that they can join together on, and they can get out from under the U.S. empire. So I think all these things are happening. China's looking at these things and saying, we don't have to punch the Americans right now. Here's the other part of it. I think they're also saying, based on everything that happened, if I say, if you step on this line, I'll punch you, and you just run over as quick as you can and step on the line, that means you're trying to draw me into a fight. So I think the other part of it is the Chinese look at it and they say, the Americans are attempting to draw us into a fight. That's what they want. We ain't going to give it to them. They want to draw us into a fight, then we ain't going to fight them, because they want to draw us into a fight. They feel like right now they got to do it as quick as possible because time is not on their side and we're growing. Well, no. Time is on our side, not their side. And we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to trade time for space, as they say. And not to mention, again, Christopher, and once again, thanks everybody for the super chats. Thank you very much for the tips on Rockfin. And again, you've got this alliances, you've got BRICS, you've got the SCO, right? You've got all of these things happening where there's new economic alliances being built. And do not be misled. These economic alliances are being built in opposition to the U.S. economic power, to the U.S. domination, the U.S. dollar domination of the world, and the fact that the United States has used the dollar as a wedge, has used the dollar as a weapon, has used their economic domination on the world as a weapon. So now you've got BRICS, you've got the SCO, you've got these other alliances that are being built specifically to oppose United States economic power. And as they grow, even Putin has talked about, well, we need an international currency based on a basket of commodities from these countries together. And Saudi Arabia wants to join in, and they got a pretty big commodity, wouldn't you say? I mean, just think of it. You put Russia, you put China, you put Saudi Arabia together. Man, you're starting to get Brazil, the 5th largest and 5th most populous country in the world. You start putting these things together, you got some monstrous commodity power. And now you build a currency based on that, where the U.S. currency is based on what? Magic. It's based on derivatives. Credit default swaps, bullshit, magic out of Wall Street in London. That if I gotta buy currency, if they come up with a currency tomorrow and their currency is based on oil and nickel and wheat and gold and precious metals, and I gotta buy that. Okay, you got Garland, you can invest in this currency. Fair enough. What's the other options? Well, the U.S. has a currency. What's that based on? Derivatives. I think I'll take the one based on on something real. On something real. So China's looking at all of that and saying, the U.S. is saying we may outgrow them by 2027, 2028. I don't think we're going to have to wait, because we got our foot on the gas and their car is in reverse and they're about to back into a freaking tree. And everybody is saying, open the door. Can I get in your car with you? I want to get out of the U.S. car and get into the door. So China's looking at it. In the show, I'll put it like this: it has often been said. I don't remember if it was Mao or one of these. I think it was some Chinese philosopher leader. Other people may be able to tell me who it was, but this was like decades ago, and they were asked about the French Revolution, and they said, "Well, what do you think about the results of the French Revolution?" And their answer was, "It's too early to tell." Right. So that's a good way of looking at the Chinese culture and how they see things. What are the results of the Pelosi visit to Taiwan? And here's what I would argue: it's too early to tell. I can give you all of this stuff. Look at it 5 years from now. Look at it a decade from now. Look at it 1 year from now. Look at it 1 year from now. China has learned something. What do they learn? The U.S. they now know that the U.S. is now going to step up provocations. They now know that the U.S. is trying to bait them into a war, trying to bait them into some kind of military confrontation. So whatever it is, if the Chinese says don't say blue, the U.S. is going to yell blue as loud as they can. If they say don't step on that over here, then the U.S. is going to step on that. But here's the other side of that, and this is what I would think. If I know that whatever I tell you not to do, you're going to do, then I have control over you, and that is an advantage. Let me tell you what I mean. I got an X over there on the floor. That X is a trap door. If you step on that X, you slide down a slide and into a pool of hungry crocodiles, right? And I say, let me tell you something. Don't you take one step closer to me. Oh yeah, boom! You take a step closer to me. Oh yeah, let me tell you something. You see that water over there? You better not touch that water. You grab the water. Yeah, watch this, you piece of shit. Boom, I drank your whole glass of water. What are you going to do now? Okay, I've had enough with your shit, pal. This is it. I've had enough. You finally pushed me too far. You son of a bitch. If you step on that X right there, I'm going to kick your ass. I've had enough of you. I've tried to be a good guy. I've tried to work this out peacefully. You step on that X right there, so help me. When I get my hands on your ass, I'm tearing you limb for limb. Oh, really? You watch this. You think you can stop me from stepping on that X? You think your threats will stop me from stepping on that X? Watch this. Crunch, 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 crunch. I step on the X, right down the slide, and the alligators are eating well. Fat alligators. Right? So there is that advantage that you have. Now, if I know, see, what do I want? I want predictability. If I can predict what you're going to do, if you are doing nothing but reacting to me, then I can guide your actions. If you do this, I'll punch you. Then you do that. If you do that, I'll punch you. I'll do that. So that's the advantage that China has. At any rate, I want to thank everybody. I got to get ready to run. I got a plane to catch. I got to head back up the road from good old Deerfield, Illinois. Thanks, everybody. Especially Chicken Patty, of course, as always. The brilliant sage and the moral and philosophical leader of this channel is Chicken Patty. Thanks a lot, Chicken Patty, and everybody else. Peace. Garland Nixon is out.